Should you open up to other people about your OCD and your challenges? Well, this is a really good question because sometimes it is important to do that, but at other times it can end up a bit of a compulsion. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about how you should approach this delicate subject of speaking to people about your struggles with OCD and anxiety. And if you are struggling with OCD and you would like to get some support with that, well, I offer a free discovery call. To get that, you can head over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes. Opening up and telling other people about our struggles with OCD and anxiety can be a powerful and liberating thing to do. But I think it's very important that we make sure that we're sharing things with the right kind of people. Of course, I don't think it's a good idea to keep these things completely to ourselves. Certainly for myself, for many years, that's what I did. When I was a teenager and in my early 20s in the UK, it felt incredibly difficult to kind of share any of this with people because there wasn't so much information about OCD and anxiety back then. People didn't really talk about it in the same way. There wasn't social media. And so it felt incredibly hard for me to really open up about these things. And I think that kind of made it worse for me for many years. And in fact, I went to the doctor and kind of told them I was struggling with anxiety, but they didn't diagnose the OCD. And it took a long time for me to realize that I actually had OCD. It wasn't until I was 30. And so because I didn't speak to people about it, because I didn't open up about my struggles, it was something that I think was unduly hard. And it took longer for me to be able to realize what the issue actually was. And, to a certain degree, that was kind of unnecessary. I could have perhaps got the right kind of support earlier. But at the same time, I don't think it's a good idea at all to kind of open up and be vulnerable to everybody, because many people simply don't understand things like OCD. They don't really understand anxiety. Perhaps they might like to, but OCD is quite a difficult thing to understand. And, we know that because people like to make jokes about OCD. People, make throwaway comments about it. I'm so OCD and these kinds of things. And of course, when we hear that, it can be quite frustrating because, people aren't quite realizing quite how challenging OCD can be, how awful it can be to experience intrusive thoughts and get caught in these loops of thinking and rituals or whatever your compulsions might be. And so, sometimes if you share with the wrong people, they may judge you in a negative way. They may not fully understand it. They may gossip about you, and obviously you don't want that. So I think it's really important that if you are going to share about OCD to somebody, it needs to be somebody that you really trust. A close friend, somebody in your family that cares for you, somebody who is going to hold that information in a positive way. Of course, that ideally would be your partner, that you're able to kind of share with them about your struggles. So I think, it's important that we do share. It can be liberating not just to hold on to that yourself and, for somebody else to kind of know that you're struggling, for them to hear about what you're struggling with, but for them to not judge you and to demonstrate that actually they still love you exactly the same. They still like you exactly the same, despite the fact that you struggle with OCD. And I think for some people, that feels amazing when they realize that. I think so many people hold on to this idea that, if people knew I was struggling with this, they wouldn't like me anymore, or they would think I'm a bad person, or they would think this or that. And the reality is, often completely different to that people have a lot of compassion for you. Perhaps they've struggled with anxiety themselves, for example, and it can help you to kind of accept yourself a bit more. That being said, I think it's also important to point out that we can overly share sometimes. And, this can be particularly relevant sometimes in close relationships, like, with your partner. At times we can kind of overshare the OCD. We can be looking for reassurance from our friends, from our family. We bring them into it too much, or maybe even, kind of going onto the internet and sharing a bit too much there. I think the important thing is that, you recognize that OCD is so sneaky. It's so good at getting us to perform sneaky compulsions. And, if we're just trying to get reassurance all the time, by speaking about it all the time, that probably isn't going to help us. It's just another way that the OCD is expressing itself. So if you are going to open up about it and kind of speak about it, it's worth thinking about, why am I doing this? Am I doing this in service of, just trying to communicate with somebody for them to fully understand me, from a kind of positive place? Or am I doing this from a needy place, from a place of OCD? I'm trying to get more certainty about something. I'm trying to reassure myself about that particular obsession. If that's the reason for why you're doing it, then of course it might be better to kind of let that go. One particular person that it would be ideal for you to open up to about your struggles with OCD and anxiety, is a therapist. If you can find somebody that really understands OCD, that you can really trust, speaking to them about the problem, somebody who really understands it, somebody who knows when you're looking for reassurance and actually doesn't give you that reassurance, who helps you to kind of figure out what are some good exposure activities for you to do, or how to apply acceptance commitment therapy to your OCD. That's kind of the most productive thing almost that you can do, with your OCD. That's the right kind of person that you want to be sharing this stuff with. But likewise, it can be helpful to kind of educate the people in your life about OCD, so that they know that they shouldn't be giving you reassurance. And if you're a family member of somebody with OCD, or a close friend, kind of educating yourself a little bit about this can be helpful, so that if you are speaking to somebody about it, that you don't give them reassurance. Reassurance is one of the most common compulsions in OCD, and unfortunately, friends and family are often culprits. What they're trying to do is they're trying to help the person who's struggling. Maybe the individual has asked for some reassurance about their particular obsession. Maybe they're fearing they're contaminated and they want some advice about that. Or maybe, they're kind of wanting you to reassure them that the oven is definitely off. In this situation, is it necessarily helpful for you to kind of give that reassurance if you're just feeding that OCD loop? So, of course, speaking up about OCD, not kind of keeping it to yourself, I think this is really, really important. But just making sure you're sharing with the right people who are trusted, people who care about you. Make sure that you're not looking for that reassurance all the time, and actually, you're sharing about your struggles, but you're not kind of bringing other people into that kind of compulsive process. Making sure that you're kind of sharing with a therapist ideally, because they can kind of guide you in the right way. And, I think if we do that, I think actually sharing is an incredibly important part of the process of learning to overcome and manage OCD. So many thanks. Please do remember, if you are struggling, I offer a free discovery call. To get that, you can head over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes.
This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are dealing with OCD, anxiety, or any mental health concerns, please consult a licensed mental health professional for support.